It's so great to see everybody and all of you here on the West Coast. Thank you for getting to your screens bright and early. For those of you joining us from Europe, thanks for staying at the end of your day. We love our international community and we're excited to see people in all of the time zones. We are excited to get started today because we have a nice full agenda to cover. While we're getting people in the room, if you want to go ahead and just post into the chat where you're coming from. We love seeing where our community is coming from. Everybody wants to know where we're all at. So just go ahead and using the chat, your name, if it's different than the one on the screen, and where you're coming from, that'd be amazing. And let's go ahead and get started. So we promised you today that we would cover one tool for how to build a ready team. And we're just going to get started right off the bat with that tool because we're going to use it today. So for those of you who've done work with me before, you might think I sound a little bit like a broken record. And that's just because this tool works so well. And I have seen it transform entire communities. I've seen it transform meetings. And I've more importantly, even seen it transform myself. Because what we do for every single meeting that we come into at LUMAN and the tool we teach people is connect, scan, focus, act. One of the biggest challenges in any organization is having excellent, well-run, productive meetings that leave people feeling clean, clear, and happy rather than more confused, unheard, and like their time has been wasted. And we find that this tool solves for that. So here's how it works. It's real simple. In every meeting, we come together and we take a pause to get us all in the same room. That connect should be appropriate to the team that you're bringing together and the amount of time you have. So if we're going to be coming together for 2 days, we can take a nice while to really explore something that's meaningful. If we've got a half an hour, then 3 breaths and 1 word about what we're creating or where we're at today is probably sufficient. But anything that gets us paused and feeling like we're learning a little bit more about each other so that we can treat each other as humans, really coming into that I-thou relationship rather than I-it or a transactional relationship with the people we're in the room with. When I'm back-to-back in Zoom calls, I find that this connect moment provides the pause I need to be present in my next meeting. And then we scan. We set our agenda together. Even if you already have a clear agenda for the meeting, just taking a moment to make sure that everybody's clear what we're going to go through, make sure that all voices feel heard and that nagging thing isn't just sitting in somebody's mind for the entirety of the meeting, hoping that somehow we'll get to it at the end. The real important thing about the scan is we don't go into the focus while we're in the scan. We stay in a scan, we set our agenda, and then we focus on one item at a time until we've clarified next actions. The challenge with a lot of meetings is that we just aren't sure who came out committed to what. So we like to focus clarifying the next action. And at the end of the meeting, we make sure we have a couple minutes to just tick back through, reviewing who's taken ownership of what action. It's really simple. And I promise if you are rigorous about applying this in your meetings, you will find an immediate change. And then as everybody begins to rely on and adopt a simple methodology, we find that our meetings improve radically over time. And the real value kicks in when we have tension, when we're under stress, when we're feeling discombobulated or pushed aside, for some reason, or when some major disruptive event has happened and we're all really in a place of unsettled or fearful nature. This tool really grounds us back in and gets us focused on what we're here to do. So let's use it today. So we're going to take a moment to just connect to ourselves, getting just present with wherever you're at. Some of you are at the very beginning of your day, some of you are at the end of your day. But you wouldn't be coming here if you weren't part of some team. And so taking a moment to just tune into the tone of your team. What's your culture? What's it like working with the people you work with? If you go into the office, what's it feel like to go into an office? If, like me, you're more likely to just arrive at your desk in the morning, how do you feel when you arrive at your desk? Are you excited for your first meeting? Or is there a sense of like fear and dread and expectation of, passive aggressive or other unfortunate behavior? And just take a moment to connect to the feelings and the experiences, both good and where there's space for improvement. We're going to come back to this together. So just taking a note of what came up that felt important. And a full breath, because we're here with a different team. This is a group that you've never been with and I've never been with. So meeting each other fresh and moving on. Our scan today, we covered Connect, Scan, Focus, Act already. We'll come back to it. We're going to look at future dynamics and really what's changing in the world of work. We're going to look at what the distinction between a high-performing team and a future-ready team is and why that's important. We're going to explore together what's not working on our teams and look at the tool that we're bringing, the class that we're bringing to really build a future-ready team and what we see is going into that. And what that course would give you in terms of what you'd be prepared to lead and bring back to your team. And then we'll return to what's a single thing you can do today to improve the functioning and culture on your team. Philip, that's over to you.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Philip. I'm also with LUMAN. And before I forget it, there's also going to be a little, gift for you at the end of this as well. So if you stay all the way to the end, as it is usual for webinars, we're going to give you a little surprise gift as well. So as I mentioned that, there's some key transformation points that we're in the middle of, right? If you look outside the window, if you turn on the news, we can all sense that we're in the middle of this transformation somehow, right? And we see when people talk about future and, this transformation, digital transformation and future stuff, typically a lot of people talk about technology innovation, right? There's a completely new technologies available that are coming down the pike really, really fast. We're using them every day, not even knowing that we're doing it oftentimes, like when we use artificial intelligence in our devices around our house or in our phone, etc. And so there's technology innovation, but there's also this other, like becoming aware of each other and becoming aware of nature, right? We do, after this whole COVID thing, we're coming back to, oh yeah, there was that climate change thing that's also happening. That's a huge thing. That's really much bigger than what just happened the last couple of years. And it's just beginning to really show its effect. So people are beginning to be more aware of that as well, right? And also being aware of the products we use and the things the waste that we produce. And there's a new awareness there, which has also led to some cultural shifts, right? We're beginning to also see that planetary integration. We're realizing that geo-arbitrage is not going to last for much longer, where some people in one place are being paid much, much less than somebody else for the same amount of money. And especially in a digital world, it doesn't really matter where you work from anymore, right? So there's changes culturally, there's movements like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, etc. A younger generation that is, telling us, please call me they, them, or I want to pronounce my own pronoun, and please, treat me like an individual, right? So there's cultural shifts that are happening here. And especially on the individual level, right? And both customers as well as employees are looking for companies and for work to be different, right? Nobody wants to buy from a company that pollutes the oceans anymore, right? And nobody wants to work in a toxic place anymore either, right? Right now, 44% of employees are actually somewhat actively looking for a new job for good reason. And, we're really being asked, what's the human future? What do we want to build here? And there's several future dynamics around that, right? We're seeing more and more transparency. As I said, we're seeing each other now, right? We're becoming aware of diversity and the need to actually utilize it rather than being, afraid of it or shying away from it or trying to manage it, but instead that actually delight in nature, because nature is diverse, and, success in nature usually includes diversity, right? So there's changes here. We have, a new focus on values, because especially as we have these technologies like AI coming in that are running things automatically, right? If we just let an AI run automatically a job search for a new board member in Germany, it would probably be a man named Thomas, right? Or if we asked an AI to look at who should be arrested in Arizona, it would probably be a person of color, right? So AI is as biased as the culture we've lived. So if we want to create a new future, we have to also become aware of the values that we have. Right? And in that, we need to also make sure that we make clear contracts, right? All these DAOs, these digital autonomous organizations, where we're going to be replacing entire organizations with just code. They're going to run on smart contracts that are only as smart as the people who agree to them. But how often have we all clicked on terms and conditions of some new app that we downloaded and didn't, too long didn't read, right? We all have that experience too. And, but now there are more consequences, right? Things are happening faster. And one thing that was okay yesterday suddenly is a disaster tomorrow, right? So there's faster consequences, quicker consequences, more consequential consequences in the sense of how an individual today has way more power for good or for bad than ever before, right? And then that's important to realize these ecosystems, that we're all part of ecosystems, like I said before. And in that, people are beginning to look at purpose, right? Because especially when you're facing death, like in the last couple of years, where suddenly there was this idea that whatever you could touch could suddenly actually kill you, right? People are beginning to say, what am I doing with my life, right? Why am I really doing this? And do I really want to continue to do that? So with that, we have a completely shifting operating metaphor. If you think about it, in the past, we thought about, especially large organizations, as sort of this tanker, right? And if you were really good and you're really smart, you could make it to all the way to the top, and you could maybe become the captain of this huge ship and tell everybody where to go, right? But that metaphor is as outdated as the oil it's running on, right? Because right now we're actually looking more at a drone swarm, right? How do we manage a drone swarm? Right? It's a very different way of managing. There's distributed purpose. There's all these different things that are happening here that didn't exist in the world before. So that brings us to this whole idea of high performing versus future ready. Right? And it's not a versus, it's actually a building on, right? Because we still want to be high performing. Of course, it's not going to go away, but it's insufficient in today's world. Right? And if you think about high performing, one of the things that makes high performing teams is they're consistent, right? There's repeatable execution, right? Where here it's agile, you're actually moving and you're changing how you do things. There's maybe not necessarily much consistency in some areas of what you do. Right? There's a low error rate because you are consistent, you actually have good disciplined processes and optimized processes, where here it's about velocity and making the important mistakes early on so that you learn quickly. Right? And here it's kind of well-tuned, and there's this beautiful metaphor of high performing being like a Ferrari, right? We think of this high-tuned machine, you know what I mean? But that's not necessarily what people want anymore, right? It's not the current thing that we want. We'd rather have a, very beautiful experience of driving and knowing that we're not polluting the environment too much, right? And we're actually attuned with what's going on. Right? So we're moving from well-tuned to highly attuned teams that are constantly checking in what's appropriate for the moment now, what's appropriate for the moment now. Is what we did yesterday still relevant or maybe not, right? And able to change on the dime as well. Right? And here we have very homogeneous teams because that makes it easier to deal with things because there's no friction, which we'll get to. And here we have lots of diversity and heterogeneity. And here, as I said, we have low friction because everybody's kind of the same and everything is defined and everything is consistent. Right? And here we actually use conflict for creation. Right? Because if you create, there's going to be conflict. But in Germany, we have a saying that if you're planing wood, there's going to be wood chips. Right? So that you want to use conflict in a team, but you want to turn it into something forward moving instead of getting stuck and fighting each other. Right? And future-ready teams know how to do that. So here is also low touch handoffs, right? You don't have to talk to each other much, right? Versus here, it's actually really deep connections with humans are necessary, right? Because we need to really sense each other and attune to each other and empathize with each other so that we can run really fast, right? We have to have that human deep rapport. Right? And in the past, we've had these hierarchies of people in a way, right? Where people get stuck in little boxes with stupid titles, and trying to get the better title. And here it's a hierarchy of purpose. Right, where actually really the whole organization ultimately falls into purpose and has breakdown pieces of that purpose that people take ownership for. And this was really product centric, right? It's really about our business is about a solution, right? We build a solution, it's either a product or a service, but it's a product, right? It's a thing, really in a way that you sell. Right? And here it's really about the customer, right? We all know what it feels like when we have an organization that is really designed to focus on the customer journey and the customer experience, right? Because our experiences in the process with them is delightful and fun and, makes it easy for us to do what we want to do. And in the high performance world, and this was kind of the career I came from, it was all about these ERP systems like SAP, right? These massive integrations of everything is in one system. There's a little bit like, Star Wars and the Death Star, right? But everything is in there and everything is, concluded in SAP, right? And here it's really this whole world of Web 3.0 that we're moving into, right? When we began with Web 1.0 to actually have information available, and with Web 2.0, we actually shifted creativity to the individual user who can now make content. And in Web 3.0, and I know it's people like Shepland who's here on the call are working on that, they're building this completely new infrastructure, right? Where we have clear chains of accountability along what we're doing and how we're creating with each other, right? And people like Sharad who's here, he's been talking a lot about the metaverse, right? We have these completely new interfaces that we're going to have available to us too, that are running on some of those new infrastructure things, right? So we have a whole new way of technology that's also enabling us to organize ourselves in a different way. And that requires a new culture, right? And culture is one of those really big words, that people throw around a lot. And if you ask half of people that throw it around to define it, they wouldn't be able to. We keep it very simple here at Lumen. We just say, it's how we do things around here, right? And that is a kind of a pattern that emerges between how individuals show up. Right? In physics, you talk about interference patterns, right? How each of us sort of like a drop in water that creates ripples. And on a team, you have everybody creating ripples. And they can be good ripples, and you're enforcing each other to be your best, and you're supporting each other and holding each other accountable to really perform on that level. Or it creates devastating, cancellations. So that's why culture is sort of at the core. And with that, we're actually curious about your culture. Teresa, maybe you lead us through that exercise of actually understanding a little bit more about what's working and not working in your world.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So we're going to take a minute to get into some breakout rooms and actually meet each other. I think we've got people coming from like all over the world. I'm excited to see the diversity of this audience and people coming from a variety of types of teams. But really taking a moment, coming back to the connect we did earlier, to just what would you like to change about your team's culture? And what under the current conditions like isn't working? We can, talk a lot about what's working, and sometimes it's also easy to gloss over what suffers when things aren't working. And really tapping into what would be possible for your team if things changed. Doing this work, my team changes every time. And we just went through this massive course that was a masterclass with incredible people. And it created a real container for the Lumen team. And things like that we didn't even really appreciate could be better came up. And what's happened on the other side of improving those things is this just massive lightness and optimism, but also just a really deep appreciation for what the creative genius that each of us is bringing. And so really tapping into what would be possible for your team if things were better. And I think a little bit through COVID, there was a going along to get along, and we settled in. And as long as things were moving forward, we were grateful. And there's reasons for that. And it's good to be grateful for what is. But I am asking you here to just take the moment to imagine how things could be if they were better. And if you had better tools to bring to the table. We're going to take about 8 minutes in breakout rooms. We're going to go into groups of 3, take a moment, meet your people, find ways to facilitate the time. You guys are all leaders here, and I trust that you can manage to ensure that all the voices get in the room. Kat will go ahead and open those up, and I'll repost these into the broadcast so that you have these questions. Okay. Let's broadcast.
I also put it in the chat, so everybody should have it.
Great job.
Sorry, stop recording? Or did we not record?
I don't have access to do that for some reason. Tirza, can you?
So did nobody record then?
No, it is recording.
Welcome back, everyone. So I would love to just get some voices in the room and hear a bit about what came up. And I will call on people to get voices in the room if necessary, but it'd be great if someone broke the ice and volunteered.
I'm ready.
Go for it.
All right. So I had an interesting conversation with Rosanna, who's a client of yours and a very happy camper at that. So yeah, so it was great talking to her. And we both kind of agreed on the fact that COVID in its wake brought about some new opportunities. In my case, it showed us the future of work much ahead of when it would have happened in the normal course. In that my whole team works remotely. It's a small team of 12 people, and everybody decided that it's good for them to work remotely and it's good for business as well. So we do team meetings in the morning every day at a given time, rain or shine. We set the day's agenda, and then everybody is on their own in terms of meeting those goalposts. And if need be, we do WhatsApp calls or largely email communication. And the real benefit of this work arrangement has been we have reduced our office costs drastically. Now I'm paying only 15% of what it used to be. So that adds to the bottom line. Second, my people I live in Dubai. So a lot of my people used to live in a neighboring emirate called Sharjah. And it used to take on the average 1 hour driving time up and down. So 2 hours a day was spent in the car, in the traffic, and absolutely unnecessary. So they'd rather spend that quality time with the family or working in the business. So it's been sort of blessing in disguise. And that's clearly the future way we intend to carry on. And everybody is happy. So I'm happy as the owner of that business. And the only flip side of it, if at all, is the fact that I'm still scouting around for the right technology tools to use, because we are in the design business, and face to face we were able to communicate better, in terms of the emotions of the clients and what they would like us to deliver. So it sometimes becomes a limiting factor to be explaining on emails, etc. So I don't know if you guys are able to advise on technology tools that would best serve an organization like ours, because I hear that all the time to be a common challenge. But yeah, we don't have to motivate people anymore. They are self-driven. They love their space, and we build a lot of trust. And so for me, it's not about teams working together. It's about people who trust each other. So that's been working well for us. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for sharing, Sharad. I really hear how you've been able to keep your team focused on the relationship and the work while eliminating that unnecessary back and forth. I know that a a lot of people are really appreciating the flexibility around working space. I'm curious to hear from.
Sana, I think had her finger up a moment ago. Wanted to add
Go
something.
ahead, Rosanna. Rosanna, did you want to share?
Oh, no, so we were in the same group, sorry. I'm trying to find the mute button. My screen got busted. It's not, I was in the same group as Sharad. And we discussed that it's important to find the right technology to collaborate and to really get the teams on the same page. And as we were discussing, maybe when it comes to design, it's a little bit more difficult. Because I was telling him I'm more in strategy, so it's easier to just, use Slack or things like that. Whereas in design, it might be a little bit more challenging to find the right platform to work together.
Yeah, platform decisions are big ones, and I think they really do vary team to team and business to business, and the size that you are. I know that we use a tool that works amazing for small teams, but I think would be disastrous for really large teams. Maybe let's get like one more voice. Shabnam, I'm so excited to see you here. I'm curious what's happening on your team.
Totally, and I also said like it was the mail just came in time for the invite for the webinar. So in our team, Mona and Lisa. Oh, nice cat. We the three of us. I think Mona is working in this space, and she also basically closed with a beautiful sentence where Lisa and I were asking about how Lisa is asking herself how she is the proponent of bottom up and purpose driven, and that's what she sees in US in Silicon Valley, but she's still working together with Switzerland, where it's more about hierarchies and so on. So this bottom up and where I'm in, it's this crazy decentralized autonomous organizations, people collaborating across the world and having still trouble. So this bottom up is not just happening. And Mona basically wrapped it up pretty well that we will all need to develop these self-leadership, self-coaching skills. And what she said was really nice. We all ultimately have to shine from within. So meaning that so that I think is where I know practically it's still difficult, even if you have the tools and people are really into exchanging a lot and communicating a lot, finding direction. If you have all the freedom, that still comes to finding direction, and that's a personal, not challenge journey, also opportunity. But many people are also lost, scared, confused, frustrated. As a group member and someone who cares about the group, definitely people need more of those interrelational skills, listening skills. But also I hope if we had a chance to enable people to build those skills up for themselves, I think that's when really step change can happen that we just need.
Yeah, we really agree with a lot of things you said there. I really heard that people kind of being lit up from the inside and being really clear and on what they're actually up to and focused, because there is a great deal more freedom. And I think all of us are facing a lot more streams of work, a lot more changes, and a lot more kind of connectivity across the organization, which on one hand supports information sharing, but also can create a lack of clarity about priorities. Maybe Philip, you want to take over and talk a bit about the various things we've seen out there and and how we're approaching them.
So actually, a lot of the things that you've mentioned were not uncommon for what we've seen out there, right? In terms of what we've looked at from the research and also for interviews and some of the clients we've been working with, what we see is that, most people come to work and they put on their work face, right? And I actually talked to a mentee of mine the other day, and he literally said, I come to work and I put on my work face, it looks like this, and I keep that all day long. Right. So essentially, right now, according to statistics, about 70% of people actually engage in some form of covering and hiding when they come to work, which also means they're leaving a lot of themselves at home. Right? They're checking not just their personality, but also their genius and creativity and vulnerability and all these different things that are not making it into the room. Right. We're also looking at, and because of, if you can actually do that, then that is actually one of those indicators for high-performing team. Right? Some of you might have heard about Project Aristotle. Google a few years ago looked at what makes our best teams, and they found that the number one indicator was psychological safety, where everybody felt included, they felt they were part of the group, everybody was feeling that it was okay to try something and move into new directions and learn, right? Where everybody's contribution was valued. But we talk a lot in our courses about acknowledgement and how people just simply don't get an acknowledgement. So they don't feel that their contribution is actually valued. And I know a lot of people who feel like little cogs in the machine because they're essentially being yelled at when things are not working, but rarely ever does anybody say, good job. Right? So there's that. And so having those kind of safety, and even the safety to challenge the system that you're working in, to say, hey, you know what, I think we could do this better. And how many people feel comfortable to bring their own suggestions to the employer around how processes could change. And, in that, a lot of ambiguity happens, a lot of CYA, right? The cover your ass kind of work happens, where ambiguity is actually a weapon, right? In the sense of, this is a job protection. If nobody really understands my job, then, it's safe, right? And we play stupid games with each other. I just had one client I worked with, there was a whole situation there where somebody was holding on to their dearest life to this one piece of information, making everybody else's life difficult as a result of it, right? And in this one case, they actually wasted about 20, 30 hours, FTE hours on a simple PO. Right? And it's $20,000 if you think about the value of that and in terms of the time and effort that went into that for a simple process that should have taken 5 minutes. And that's also leading to this lack of clear agreements. Right? People don't know how to really agree with each other on things and actually even know how to deal with requests. Right? We're still under the assumption that when your boss tells you something, that it's a command. Right? And we live in this old military command control type structure. But when your boss says, hey, I need this report by Friday, that actually should be a request. Right? They should actually be saying, hey, can you do this for me by Friday? And then you can say, you know what, Friday is really hard. How about next Wednesday? Would that work for you? Right? And you actually have a negotiation about your workload. And instead of that, see people at 120, 130% of their capacity burning out slowly, or actually pretty fast at this point. Right? And then you have these stupid meetings, as I was talking about at the beginning, where 70% of time is wasted, right? And 31 hours average are spent in unproductive meetings per month. And they're beginning to understand that we do need to continue to learn. Right? We can't just stop. Right? This whole idea that you go to school and then you go to university and then you learn something, then you have the on-the-job training, and then you do that until you get the golden watch. That was already not working in my generation. It's definitely not working now. Right? So we need actually the inspiring to say, hey, we want to create, we want to try new things, we want to explore ourselves, we want to live our individuality here at work. And that only works if we actually care about each other. Right? If we really look at, where we have that sense of belonging, right? Especially right now, part of the reason why so many people are willing to leave their job is because Zoom is simply transactional, right? You're just having this, we're getting work done, but where's the feeling of belonging, right? How do I sense that I'm actually part of the team anymore? And if you don't have that, then you might as well go work somewhere else and be transactional somewhere else. And of course, the big part is all purpose, right? To really think about, what am I doing here? Right? Because people are beginning to realize that they're going to die. And if that's news to you, please forgive me, but in all likelihood, with all the life extension and everything, you're probably going to die one day. Right? And there's all kinds of theories of what happens after, who knows? But there's going to be this moment just before where you look back and you're like, oh, this was my life, right? And you want to be severed, where it's like, oh, this part was work and this part was my life. It's like, no, right? These are all your moments here, right? There's actually a TV show with our antimatter, a company called LUMAN Industries with the O, and where they actually literally put a chip in people's brain to sever them between work and life, so that they don't remember who they are when they're at work, and they don't remember who they are at work when they're in their lives, right? And that's what a lot of people kind of comically live, right? Which is why the show is so sadly funny, right? But it could be different. We've seen it very differently. We've seen teams that we've worked with and out there that actually bring full authenticity to work. Right? And think about that wasted time that would go away, where you could just be yourself. You didn't have to put your happy face on, and then if someone interrupts that happy face, you get angry. But you can actually say, today I'm not feeling so well. Leave me alone. Right? And if you can actually do that at work, right? And you actually talk to your colleagues about what's going on for you, right? And have that support also, right? If everybody felt safe to go and learn and grow and explore, and we supported each other in that, right? Where we become each other's keepers and support each other in our growth and development, right? Where we make clear agreements with each other and everybody knows who's on first, right? Where we don't have to waste time finding stuff out, where we have clear technologies and we have clear places where everybody can find answers. And we have ways to talk to each other where we actually ask questions and we don't walk on assumptions, right? In English, there's this beautiful word, assume, right? And if you break it down, it makes an ass out of you and me, right? And so if you assume things, that's not helpful, right? So we actually have to get clarity and ask a question, right? And be safe to ask questions where it's okay to do that, right? And so that we can then also make real agreements, like I just said, where we have clear accountability because we made requests of each other and we agree to them consciously, and we're clear on the conditions of fulfillment, and we're clear what's expected of us. And we don't have to stress about it because we know that nobody has a right to expect anything of you unless you made an agreement. And if you have clear agreements with your colleagues, think about how much easier life would be. Right? You just knew who's on first and who's doing what and who's committed to doing what, right? So that you can rely on each other and know what's happening. And in that, of course, sometimes shit breaks down. Sometimes stuff doesn't work, right? And then you have to actually know how to share that with each other, right? And create a culture of feedback. And we have clients that come to us and say, we want a feedback culture. And I'm like, okay, what do we really want, right? Because if it's not coming, and this is kind of the next thing, if it's not coming from a place of care, of genuine care for each other, then it's just, dumping shit on each other, right? And telling each other horrible things about each other. That's not helpful. Right, so feedback has to be actually delivered, and actually starting with acknowledgement, because we all don't get enough of that, right? But has to be delivered also with clear messages where it's about the mutual growth, not about making someone wrong for what they did. But that comes from that place of care. And Toza always likes to say, like, the difference between a group of people working together in a team is that they genuinely care about each other, right? As humans, as individuals. And finally, think about what could be possible for you and in your company if everybody was really clear on purpose. Right? And purpose is another one of those big buzzwords, especially in the last couple of years, right? 2/3 of American employees Googled it during COVID, right? Thinking about what's my purpose here and what am I doing, right? But purpose doesn't have to be saving the trees and the oceans and the children and the whales and everything, right? It doesn't have to be this huge social thing. It has to be a clear why that's meaningful to you. So when you go to work every day, when you do something every day, you come with lit up eyes, you come with a clear direction, right? Someone mentioned it earlier, right? They have a knowing where we're all going and why we're doing it. So that when we have conflict or when we have issues, we can come back to, hey, we're all doing this, right? Yes, remember the purpose here, right? And having that as a common foundation for your own motivation and for the motivation of the team. And this is really what we're trying to do with creation culture, right? It gives people some of those basic tools, and I'll let Toza explain how we're doing that in terms of this 15-week format. But this is really the real point behind creation culture, is to give people the tools to learn with each other, how to support each other, to be their very best and deal with the constantly changing environment that we live in. You're actually on mute, my dear.
Thank you. At least Mona was in our masterclass, and we're using a very similar format to our last class, but the structure of the weeks is changing. So we're going to have a kickoff week, and then we're going to have a 14-week process where we spend 2 weeks on each basic concept. In week A, we're developing like that personal capacity. What's it mean to me? So Shivnam put in the chat, how do we develop psychological safety? So the first is to really understand, when am I safe? How do I create safety in myself? When am I not safe? When do I withhold or feel unsafe to share? What are the conditions creating that? And then in the B week, we're really going to explore practical practices for building safety on your team or in each of the different concepts, whichever concept it is. How do we actually build authenticity? And really, what's the value of that? Because these concepts do feel a little bit far from business value. And I know that what we're all seeking to do here is create customer value and contribute to the world. And if, you know, it's really nice to have a team that cares for each other, but if that's not actually contributing to outcomes, then why bother? And so in each of these processes, we're also going to be exploring what's the value and how do you enroll other people in that value? Because we're aware that you're coming representing a group, you're not, you know, your whole team. And so you're going to need to go back and literally sell your team on the value of these practices. So in all of this, we're going to learn first, like, what does this mean for me? How do I actually practically apply this on my team? Actual exercises you can do on a weekly basis that can have us come back to creating safety, creating clear agreements, giving quality feedback that actually moves us forward. And then why do we do that? What does it mean to have continuous learning? What does it mean to have a workplace where people feel like genuinely cared about and supported in doing their job? And then in all of this, we also have a playbook with references and guides to support you along the way. This course runs for 15 weeks so that we can have that initial kickoff. We're looking at just an hour a week in class time together with some videos and additional materials to support your journey. We understand that everybody here is really busy. And so we've taken a light touch over time approach because we find that really the important thing is that these tools get incorporated in your day-to-day work. And so this is a real process of bit by bit incorporating new skills and practices into who you be as a leader and how your team works together. Philip, is there anything you want to add there?
I think you said it beautifully.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Then really just like fundamentally, for those of you who are curious, what's our kind of philosophy here? How do we think about change? So we look at this as coming from these kind of fundamental concepts. In everything, we're moving from awareness of a topic, the ability to take responsibility for my outcomes in that area, and then standing in ownership of what's being created around me. So in that first week, we're really building that awareness. And in the second week, we're developing the responsibility, the ability to take clear action so that you can stand in ownership of creating safety, clarity, and agreements on your team. And we think of this as starting with really like your attitude or your mindset, the actual actions or behaviors you're taking forward, and then delivering on those all-important outcomes. And so you'll notice that we talk a little bit less about outcomes because we're really focused on changing that attitude, where you come from or your mindset, the actions or behaviors you're bringing into the world. And we know that those are going to deliver better outcomes. But we also appreciate you're going to need to sell those outcomes to your team. So this course will incorporate a bit about how you sell the outcomes. We're really looking to do this together. Our last master class was amazing in helping us refine and develop the materials. We really want to work with you to change how teams work. We believe that lit up people really create a lit up future. Bright people create bright futures. And so really want to work with you to build bright people on your team. And we're hoping that you'll join us. And a little bit about what that looks like and who we're looking for. A lot of you are team leaders, people who would bring this work back to your team. We're excited to work with team leaders. We also love having professional facilitators. A few of you are professional facilitators. Some, joined me in the last masterclass. These folks can actually have a path to being certified and taking this work forward and on your own. We're also looking for partners, people who want to understand this work and see that there's a way for us to partner together to bring a shared change into the world. We understand and believe that there is enough change out there for all of us to be busy for the rest of our lifetime. And so we're really excited to work with others to really build a movement around creating workplaces that work for humans. And so we're excited to meet you on that. If you take this course, what we're aiming to have you be able to actually do is lead concrete exercises that build capacity and practices that create culture. These are small changes that you can make no matter where you sit in the hierarchy. So these aren't just things that have to happen from the top. We want you to be able to advocate for the value of consciously developing cultural practices. Why does this contribute to effective strategy and the real bottom line. And really be able to point to and show the true costs of poor behavior. And then we also want you to be able to approach every interaction with confidence, with authenticity and purpose, so that this really just becomes who you be as a leader. So we will cap enrollment on this course. We find that having that group of kind of 13 to 16 people gives us a small enough group that we can know and care about every individual. We can ensure that we don't lose anybody, and that everybody feels independently supported and really connected and part of the group. We aim to create a very caring cohort of leaders who are working to build these skills together. And so we have a few small group leaders who are joining us from our last masterclass, who are going to be really your side-by-side guide, so that there'll be Philip and I and Kat conveying the material. And then we also have these small group leaders who've been through this course who are really ready to support you individually. We're really excited that we have that layer of capacity now. And then we're really trying to get this locked in. We've got 2 more weeks of open, but having that enrollment locked in lets us really start building, getting it on everybody's calendars, dealing with any scheduling challenges that might come up, and really knowing who's going to be in this course and how we're going to learn together. So to that end, we are offering all of you 30% off if you get registered this week. If you're enrolling with a colleague or team member, we're going to extend that discount through. We know it takes a minute to get coordinated. And so this is the discount code. We'll share back out this deck and the recording. So if you can't write it down, don't worry about it. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have your team members if you want to join with a member of your team. And if there's somebody in your community you think would be a great addition, we have enough open space for a few more people. So we'd love to have them too. Philip, anything you want to add there?
Actually, the only other thing was that if time isn't right for you, or this doesn't work for you right now, or you want to actually have a specific dedicated course for your team, you can also reach out to Tirza directly, and we can set that up as well. Right? Because originally this team, we actually planned it and built it for specific teams as such. This is our very, very first open enrollment class, because I think partly we had so much fun with people like Mona, who was in our last class and totally rocked it. And I'm actually going to do a German version of this class. So if you have German colleagues that only speak German, there will be a German version starting at May 30th as well. You know, sometimes it's a little difficult with cultural principles, right? Most of us, I think, here are used to working in international teams, but there's also local teams that do require a bit more attention in their own language. So there's that as well. And we're planning a Spanish course later this year. And who knows what else is going to come up as we're meeting more people that are interested in taking this work out there. You know, who knows, maybe we'll do one with Sharad in his world at one day. And he's a wonderful, awesome man down there, creating culture around him as well and changing how people do things in the Middle East. So.
We've got a few more minutes for questions, and then you all know that I love a meeting that starts on time and ends on time. So
self-care in between.
if we've got questions, I'd love to take those.
I don't have a question, but I want to thank your whole team for this webinar. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's always a great experience. And I'm serious about finding clients for you in our part of the world. There are a lot of multinationals I already work with. So let's make it official, and let's go to the market. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharad. We always appreciate your enthusiasm, and we look forward to our continued partnership with you.
And if you do want to learn about, I do have to plug that real quick. If you do want to learn about metaverse and some of those technologies, Sharad's been doing a wonderful series of webinars around some of those things, really helping people orient in this new world. So kudos to your series there, really well. And on that note, you know, Shabnam, who's in my screen next to you, she's a wonderful expert on DLTs and distributed technologies like that as well. So you might want to see if you can invite her sometime. So this is what this is really about too. Like, we're here to build community and really kind of, you know, connect people with each other and connect around the world.
I'd be interested to find a bit to know a bit more about the German offers. Is there gonna be a webinar like today in German?
I'm planning that. Mona is, helping me organize some of this stuff, and I'm a little horribly behind because this week in particular, I had like about 8 or 9 workshops this week. It was kind of ridiculous. But yes, I think we'll do an intro webinar for the German one as well. And then the plan is to start it on May 30th. And I'm also happy to answer any specific questions you have prior to it as well, and even in German. So we can even talk in German if you prefer that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa, I already sent you the invite on LinkedIn so that we can chat aside.
Well, I look forward to meeting you and learning about your world.
Lisa and I met through Swissnex, and she's quite excited about the possibility of bringing this back in German. I think it's going to be huge.
Well, after being back in Germany for the last 4 or 5 years, my experience here is that a lot of Germans can really use this, and just like kind of learn a little bit how to get beyond the pure rational world that they hide their emotions behind, that are, so I think a lot of those tools, and even working here, I work a lot with Siemens and similar companies, and that German engineering mind, really benefits from that. And I think the good news is that especially also the next generation of leaders is really waking up to the idea that strategy requires culture, and that those two are really connected with each other. Hi, Kitty. That strategy and culture need to embrace each other rather than being 2 different things. Right, and that we need these new cultures, right? And even the German tech boys now is beginning to say this is maybe not so esoteric or soft skill or women's stuff, but they're beginning to realize that maybe they should learn a little bit active listening too, and that it's good that they have emotions too. So that's happening here as well, and I think around the world, which is good.
Any last questions? Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And we'll get you the deck and the recording, and make it a great day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all of you. Bye. Have a great day.
Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
And pause recording.
Yes.